Once, long ago, there lived near the ancient city of Strasburg on the river Rhine a young and handsome count whose name was Otto. As the years flew by, he remained unwed, and never so much as cast a glance at the fair maidens of the country round. And for this reason, people began to call him Stoneheart. Now it chanced that Count Otto, on one Christmas Eve, ordered that a great hunt should take place in the forest surrounding the castle. He and his guests, his many retainers, rode forth, and the chase became more and more exciting. It led through thickets and over pathless tracts of forest, until at length Count Otto found himself separated from his companions. He rode on by himself until he came to a spring of clear, bubbling water, known to the people around as the Fairy Well. Here Count Otto dismounted. He bent over the spring, and he began to lave his hands in the sparkling tide. But to his wonder, he found that though the weather was cold and frosty, the water was warm and delightfully caressing. He felt a glow of joy pass through his veins as he plunged his hands deeper. He fancied that his right hand was grasped by another, soft and small, which gently slipped from his finger the gold ring that he always wore. And lo, when he drew out his hand, the gold ring was gone. Full of this mysterious event, the Count mounted his horse and returned to his castle, resolving in his mind that the very next day he would have the Fairy Well emptied by his servants. He retired to his room, and throwing himself just as he was upon his couch, tried to sleep, but the strangeness of the adventure kept him restless and wakeful. Suddenly, he heard the hoarse baying of the watchhounds in the courtyard, and then the creaking of the drawbridge as though it was being lowered. Then came to his ear the patter of many small feet on the stone staircase, and he heard distinctly the sound of light footsteps in the chamber adjoining his own. Count Otto sprang from his couch, and as he did so, there sounded a strange, delicious music, and the door of his chamber flung open. And hurrying into the next room, he found himself in the midst of numberless fairy beings clad in gay and sparkling robes. They paid no heed to him, but began to dance and laugh and sing to this mysterious music. In the center of the apartment stood a splendid Christmas tree, the first ever seen in that country. And instead of toys and candles, there hung on its lighted boughs diamond stars and pearl necklaces, bracelets of gold ornamented with colored jewels, and agates of rubies and sapphires, silken belts embroidered with oriental pearls, and daggers mounted in gold, studded with the rarest gems. The whole tree swayed, sparkled, and glittered in the radiance of its many lights. Count Otto stood speechless, gazing at all this wonder, when suddenly the fairies stopped dancing and fell back to make room for a lady, dazzling beauty, who came slowly toward him. She wore on her raven black tresses a golden diadem, set with jewels. Her hair flowed down upon a robe of rosy satin and creamy velvet. She stretched out her two small white hands to the Count, and she addressed him in sweet, alluring tones. "Dear Count Otto," she said, "I come to return your Christmas visit. I am Ernestine, Queen of the Fairies. I bring you something you lost in the Fairy Well." And as she spoke, she drew from her bosom a golden casket set with diamonds, and placed it in his hands. He opened it eagerly, and found within it his lost gold ring. Carried away by this wonder for all, and overcome by an irresistible impulse, The Count pressed the fairy Ernestine to his heart, while she, holding him by the hand, drew him into the magic mazes of the dance. The mysterious music floated through the room, and the rest of the fairy company circled and whirled around the fairy queen and Count Otto, and then gradually dissolved into a mist of many colors, leaving the Count and his beautiful guest alone. Then the young man, forgetting all of his former coldness toward the maidens of the country round, fell on his knees before the fairy and besought her to become his bride. At last she consented, on the condition that he should never speak the word death in her presence. And the next day, the wedding of Count Otto and Ernestine, Queen of the Fairies, was celebrated with great pomp and magnificence, and the two continued to live happily for many years. Now, it happened on a time that the Count and his fairy wife were to hunt in the forest around the castle. The horses were saddled and bridled, and standing at the door the company waited, and the Count paced the hall in great impatience. But still the fairy Ernestine tarried long in her chamber. At length she appeared at the door of the hall, and the Count addressed her in anger. "You have kept us waiting so long," he cried, "that you would make a good messenger to send for death." Scarcely had he spoken the forbidden and fatal word, when the fairy, uttering a wild cry, vanished from his sight. And in vain Count Otto, overwhelmed with grief and remorse, searched the castle and the fairy well. No trace he would find of his beautiful wife, but the imprint of a delicate hand that was set in the stone arch above the castle gate. Years passed, and the fairy Ernestine did not return, and the Count continued to grieve. And every Christmas Eve he set up a lighted tree in the room where he first met the fairy, hoping in vain that she would return to him. Time passed, and the Count died. The castle fell into ruins, but to this day may be seen above the massive gate, deeply sunken in the stone arch, the impress of a small and delicate hand. And such, say the good folk of Strasburg, was the origin of the Christmas tree.
Merry Christmas! Ho, 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 ho.
Dear Santa, I've been a good mom all year. I've fed, cleaned, cuddled my 2 children on demand, visited the doctor's office more than the doctor. I sold 62 cases of candy bars to raise money to plant a shade tree in the school playground. And figured out how to attach 9 patches onto my child's Girl Scout sash with staples and a glue gun. I was hoping you could spread my list out over several Christmases, since I have to write this one with my son's red crayon on the back of a receipt in the laundry room between cycles, and who knows when I'll find any more free time in the next 18 years, so here are my Christmas wishes. I'd like a pair of legs that don't ache after a day of chasing kids, in any color except purple, which I already have, and arms that don't flap in the breeze but are strong enough to carry a screaming toddler out of a grocery store. I'd also like a waist, since I lost mine somewhere in the 7th month of the last pregnancy. if you're hauling big-ticket items this year, I'd like a car with fingerprint-resistant windows and a radio that only plays adult music. Yeah. A television that doesn't broadcast any programs containing talking animals. And a refrigerator with a secret compartment behind the crisper where I can talk on the phone. On the practical side, Santa, I could use a talking daughter doll that says, "Yes, Mommy," to boost my parental confidence, along with one potty-trained toddler, 2 kids who don't fight, and 3 pairs of jeans that zip all the way up without the use of power tools. I could also use a recording of Tibetan monks chanting, "Don't eat in the living room," and "Take your hands off your brother," because my voice seems to be out of my children's hearing range and can only be heard by the dog. And please don't forget the Play-Doh travel pack, the hottest stocking stuffer this year for mothers of preschoolers. It comes in 3 fluorescent colors guaranteed to crumble on any carpet and make the in-laws' house seem just like home. If it's too late to find any of these products, I'd settle for enough time to brush my teeth and comb my hair in the same morning, or the luxury of eating food warmer than room temperature without it being served in a styrofoam container. If you don't mind, I could also use a few Christmas miracles to brighten the holiday season. Would it be too much trouble to declare ketchup a vegetable? It would clear my conscience immensely. It would be helpful if you could coerce children to help around the house without demanding payment as if they were the bosses of an organized crime family. Or if my toddler didn't look so cute sneaking downstairs to eat contraband ice cream in his pajamas at midnight. Mom! Mom! Coming! Well, Santa, the buzzer on the dryer is ringing, and my son saw my feet under the laundry room door and wants his crown back. Have a safe trip. Remember to leave your wet boots by the fireplace, and come in and dry off so you don't catch a cold. Help yourself to the cookies on the table, but don't eat too many or leave crumbs on the carpet, please. Oh, and one more thing, Santa. You can cancel all my requests if you can keep my children young enough to believe in you. Always, Mom.
Merry Christmas! Ho, 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 ho.
'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap, when out on the roof there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutter, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick. Oh, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur, from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his sack. His eyes, how they twinkled. His dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye, and a twist of his head, soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."